Hey, it's Mazzy, welcome back. It's the Music Stupid, number 69. 5 records from around the world. A little bit of a mood, easygoing session today. Not that all these records are down low, moody, ethereal, but they have a vibe to them, a worldly vibe, since they're from around the world. And I want to start out with a record that was turned on to me about 5 years ago now or so by another vinyl creator, does a few videos here and there still. His name is Sherv, and he turned me on to this album right here. This is a comp from about 2015 of Maki Asakawa, obviously a Japanese artist. This is a record that I latched onto immediately. When I heard a little bit of it after a Sherv played it, I just fell in love with it. And I fell in love with more, of course, with every listen. And there was one song in particular that kind of pulled me in because I knew it. At least I knew that song, and it was an unlikely song to cover, I thought, and it was fantastic. Now, Maki Asakawa put her first album out in 1967. She came out of this sort of a bluesy folk music, obviously a post-war Japan, and a very urban artist in Tokyo initially, and did some really interesting hybrids of Western blues and a lot of black music, of blues, gospel, and soul. And she's got a really kind of cocktail loungy vibe to some of her stuff. Some cover things she's done. Got obviously the Nina Simone, Billie Holiday vibe, a little bit of Bessie Smith. So you got that a gospel tinge in there, but you got these great musical arrangements that are kind of very jazzy. Sometimes she gets a little more funky and produced as she progresses into the 70s, the late 70s, the 80s, 90s, and beyond. And just a wonderful, wonderful record. Now, this is a double collection. It does come with a book kind of telling her story and about some of the music in here. The record, the song on here, the last cut on side 2, that really just startled me because of how I knew that song. She ends up side 2 with Govinda. And Govinda is an Indian chant, and it was first released by the Radha Krishna Temple, produced by George Harrison in 1971 on that great Apple record. I love that record. Recorded in London at I guess Apple Records, I think is where it was recorded. And it's a wonderful piece of music. And when I heard her do it, it was just very unusual hearing this Japanese singer do this Indian Krishna type music. And it's just a really lovely, lovely version on here. This just has a great vibe to it. Let me just kind of show you a few pictures from the booklet to give you an idea. Really interesting. Always wore black, very kind of an urban style. Sometimes there's acoustic folk backings. Obviously there's the jazz, kind of the jazz you'd hear in like a Japanese whiskey bar or lounge or hotel bar, but in a really beautiful kind of late night way. I just love this collection. It's just a beautiful, beautiful collection. A beautiful voice. Highly recommended. I don't know if this is still available. It is on Honest John's Records, licensed from EMI Japan. And what a beautiful, beautiful record. Again, Maki Asakawa. This came out on vinyl about 9 or 10 years ago. Double album. A wonderful record, wonderful record. Every time I pull it out, I have to play the whole thing through because it's just stunning, stunning. Next, going to 1963, an American artist. And this is the debut album by the acoustic guitar savant by the name of Sandy Bull. This is his debut on Vanguard, which was really a big folk label in the early 60s and mid 60s. Of course, it merged and brought into some rock and psychedelic bands like Country Joe and the Fish later. And what's beautiful about this is called Fantasias for guitar and banjo. And it's only him on guitar, and on some of the tracks, the drums. Billy Higgins, the jazz drummer, played with Ornette Coleman, free jazz in some ways, bop, post-bop, Worked with a lot of artists in the 1960s into the 70s. Just a really great album. Now the side one here is this piece. It's one original kind of improvised piece called Blend with the two of them, with Billy Higgins and Sandy Bull. And it's on acoustic guitar, and it's very influenced by Ravi Shankar. So it's got this raga thing throughout it. You know, there's a certain modality about the way it's arranged, and it goes through a bunch of different sort of world music layers, but acoustic based and great percussion, great drums. Not bombastic, but just nice interplay between the two, and it takes up the entire side. Side two, the first two tracks are banjo-led tracks, and there's a Carmen Burana Fantasy based on the Carl Orff composition, the classical, and then of course the classical composer William Byrd, Nam Nobis Domine, or Domine, maybe that's what it is. And then Little Maggie and Gospel Tune. The final tune on this is the only track played on a Fender electric guitar, and he's playing them himself solo using a cymbal foot pedal, just him and that. And it's really kind of like intense, low key, but intense electric guitar, which was really interesting for the time on a folk record from 1963. I just think it's a fabulous record. Beautiful cover art, photography there. Sandy Bull, Fantasias for guitar and banjo, Stereolab series, Vanguard Records, 1963. Then an album, this is the first album that I got in 1975. It's an album I just kind of stumbled on. We brought it in the store, the record store I worked in, and I opened up on Island Records, Paco de Lucía. It's his first Western release, or first release in America and England, as I recall. Obviously, a lot of his stuff from Spain had been imported. Flamenco guitar player, but really a modern flamenco style with this really kind of a revolving guitar solo type thing, and obviously the flamenco percussion, which is common. But the flow he gets and the intensity he gets and the speed in which he plays, and very it's staccato, but it's more rounded. So it's more organic than sometimes flamenco guitar can be very like staccato based. But I love how this kind of just rolls off the playing and his style on here. I just think this is a beautiful record. The one piece, the opening track that was one of my favorites, Entre Dos Aguas, has been used in the motion picture by Woody Allen, Vicky Cristina Barcelona. It's a theme that's repetitive in that movie. I remember being in the theater when I saw that Woody Allen film, and right away I knew that piece of music was from here. And sure enough, it's this version from this album. A wonderful, beautiful record. Of course, he'd go on. The only time I saw him was when he did that night in San Francisco. They did 2 nights. I don't know which night I went to. Columbia originally released it, and then Impex in the last couple of years did the Saturday night concert with John McLaughlin on guitar, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful record of modern fusion of flamenco, jazz, and classical music. I just love that record. So Paco de Lucía, Island Records, Paco. 1975. Another comp, an artist that I got into, again, about 5 years ago, and someone that I totally missed, and most people I know missed it, until Numero Group put this comp out. And this is Charlie Megira. This is the comp of his work of all his 7 records. He is an interesting artist. He came out in the 1990s playing music, small, independent things out of Israel. Born in Tel Aviv, I believe, played in Israel, into the kind of indie post-punk scene that he was influenced by. He's influenced by artists like the Cramps and guitar savants, and he's got that vibe like which you'd hear on all these Twin Peaks records, and of course Ry Cooder would do a little bit of that, or just swampy, reverb-drenched lead guitar things. Now, the thing about this comp and this music on here It's as if he didn't know how to turn the reverb off. It is lo-fi, intense, over-the-top reverb on the instrumental guitar where he overdubs different guitar layers occasionally, usually 2 layers it seems to me. I'd say half of it has vocals sung in Hebrew. That's part of the reason he probably didn't translate over. He did move to Berlin for a while, lived in Berlin, got married, had a kid there. He lived in North Carolina for a while, and the record thing just wasn't happening for him. And I'd never heard of him until Numero Group put this comp out. They've since put, I think, 2 other records out of his proper albums, but I'd say this is the one to get. But again, it's this heavy reverb, ethereal, just soaked in it, and sounds like it just recorded. It could have been recorded in a garage. Literally, it's like garage band, intensity, but not loud, direct intensity. It's really beautiful, beautiful record. It comes with a book really showcasing his entire career there. So he played solo, he played in a band for a number of years. A lot of his stuff has a very 1950s vibe, that old kind of like late 50s, early 60s, guitar-drenched Dwayne Eddy a little bit, but slowed down. His guitar thing is like at a slow simmer, the way he plays. It's not upbeat, fast music at all. But, he looks the part how his records sounded. Charlie Megira, beautiful record. This is one of those records that has come in and out of print, a Numero Group. I remember when I first heard about it, I heard it and I listened to someone had a copy of it and I couldn't find it, and it was selling for a lot of money. And then about 6 months, 8 months, a year later, whenever it was, Numero Group repressed it. So my guess is if it's not available now, it'll come around. So I would not pay expensive prices, but you might, write to them, find out about them. But he had this really kind of, cool look that, again, right out of bands like the Cramps and that kind of post-punk sound that it was very ethereal and mood-based. But again, reverb up the yin-yang, more reverb that you'd ever want, and it's like it's got stuck on. But it suits the music, it suits the mood. And again, it's not a hi-fi record, but it's not like a bootleg at all. It's just really a killer soundtrack in a way. Sometimes it has that moody kind of soundtrack, like in a way, if you've heard the guitar album that Ry Cooder did with the Cuban guitarist, is it Manuel? On such records. It's kind of like that, very ambient in a way, but highly recommended. Charlie Megira, Numero Group number 211. And lastly, an album from 2022, a live album called Between Us by Anoushka Shankar. This is a really beautiful Sunday morning album, but it's very majestic. It's in a way like the middle section of Within You and Without You from the Beatles. And obviously that's how probably a lot of you people and myself got into Indian classical music, where George Harrison combined Indian classical artists with Western orchestration, helped by George Martin, I assume, during that period on that album. The only time I saw Anoushka Shankar is when she conducted the orchestra of Indian musicians and Western musicians at the Concert for George at the Royal Albert Hall. She conducted a piece that her father, who was sitting on the side of the stage, Ravi Shankar, composed for the Concert for George Harrison. She's obviously the daughter, one of the 2 daughters. Her half-sister is Nora Jones. So she's the one that took over the sounds, the sitar playing of her father. And it's beautiful on this live recording from the Netherlands in 2019 is when this was actually recorded, released in 2022. It's with Manu Del Lago, her ongoing percussionist who plays the handpan and other percussion instruments. There's a double bass and the conductor, Julia Buckley. And this is with the Metropole Orchestra in the Netherlands. And it's got a really beautiful, lush Western string section of violins, violas, cellos, and brings kind of that feel from that middle section, as I said, of Within You, Without You, that George Harrison wrote with the Beatles there on Sgt. Pepper. That's how I got into this music, and I'm a massive fan of the music of Ravi Shankar, and Anoushka kind of brings it to another level. She's done records where she kind of really brings in and overlaps with Western artists. Obviously, a lot more than her father was more pure Indian classical. Aside from the things he did with George Harrison, they pretty much stuck to that, where Anoushka has done different things. She's touring now in America, I understand. She's just about to release the third of a series of EPs she's released over the last several years. So that'd be something you might want to check out. I have not heard any of those yet, but this is a beautiful, beautiful record here. Again, it's called Between Us, Anoushka Shankar. It's live. Aside from the applause between tracks, you wouldn't know it's a live record. It's a lovely recording, really well recorded, well balanced, and it's beautiful. The final track is the slow, moody Land of Gold, which seems more like something it could be from a film score with obviously the sitar on here. There's some, upbeat ragas on here, as well as the combination classical piece, like the opening track, Traveler. I just love this record. One of my favorites of the last few years. Right when we got out of the pandemic, I got this, and this really has that perfect vibe. And where we are right now, the moods of where we are right now in the world, this is like a perfect record and just a perfect listening experience. Anoushka Shankar. That's it. Mazzy loves you. See you next time.